Sorry, I realized I was on mute. Thanks for joining. Good afternoon. We're just going to give it another minute or two before we get started. We are expecting a good number of attendees. All right. Good afternoon, all. We're just going to give it another minute or two to allow some time for some more of our attendees. We appreciate you joining us. We have a good amount of people who've signed up, so we'll just give it another minute or two for them to come in. And hi, Ryan. Thanks for joining. He's going to be our co-presenter today. All right. Why don't we get started? It's top of the hour here. I think there'll be some folks coming in as we proceed here. Let me just quickly introduce myself, and then I'll have Ryan introduce himself as well. Good afternoon, everyone. This webinar is being recorded. That way, anyone who attends or didn't get a chance to attend can watch it later or share it as needed. My name is Rob Hodling. I am the Deputy Advisor for Infrastructure and Federal Funds to Commissioner Bowden and Governor Lamont. I am leader of the CT BILT team, and we predominantly look to navigate and facilitate on behalf of our what I would say clients in this point and partner agencies and quasis through the federal funding system. So today's webinar is going to be co-hosted by me and Ryan. So I would love to transition you, Ryan, to do a quick intro.
Thanks, Robin. Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Hughes, and I am a CT Built team member, program associate. And today I know we're focused on the BIL as well as the resiliency components within the BIL. And so I'll turn it over back to Rob.
All right, thank you, Ryan. And what we'll do is, oh, I jumped ahead here. There we go. So what we're going to do here is today, the focus of our presentation, we called it Resiliency in Action, how BIL, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, funded infrastructure projects and how those are strengthening Connecticut's future. So what we'll do is we'll go through a presentation, we'll spotlight, highlight a number of projects that we've worked in unison and help with both our state partners over at the Department of Transportation, CTDOT, as well as our partners over at DEEP, Department of Environmental Energy Protection, and others. So we appreciate it, and we will gladly take any questions and Q&A towards the end of the session. So before I get started, I just want to make sure that the screen is being shared. Ryan, you see it, correct? Okay, good. I'm hoping everyone else, if folks can't see it, please let me know. So we will proceed. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining. Really, Resiliency Week is really important. I had the great pleasure of being a co-chair over at the Connecticut Insurance Department's Ensuring the Future event yesterday, where I was co-chair and speaker of the Severe Weather and Resiliency Council, where the governor spoke. And he highlighted, as well as Lieutenant Governor Bicewicz, they highlighted the impacts of the severe weather, climate change, you name it, and why resiliency matters to Connecticut. So this is really an important week for the state, not just state leadership, but also all of you, because we want to highlight collectively and work collaboratively on how we can all work towards a better future. So I think the folks on this call are pretty well aware of what we're going to say here, which is Connecticut is vulnerable to coastal storms and flooding, given we're a coastal state. We've had grid disruptions and aging infrastructure. I think that goes for much of the nation. And the climate-driven risks, as we can see here, transportation, water, ecosystems. Sometimes those ecosystems are off, like it could be a reef, maybe not here or coral reefs, but it could be clams, oysters, it could be any number of things. As well as forests and walking trails, and there's a lot of different things that affect us in terms of ecosystems. And I think a lot of folks are well aware that with, regardless if you believe or not in climate change, there's a statement by some a very famous physicist where he says uh, essentially, you may not believe in climate change, but your insurance companies do, right? And there's a reason because it is science for many, and there's a projected sea level rise, and that impacts all of us. So what we're going to focus on is how the bipartisan infrastructure law investments really do mean for Connecticut, stronger, safer, more sustainable Connecticut. So what we're going to do here very quickly, and I just want to highlight this for a moment. Transportation infrastructure and transit-oriented development really equals jobs, right? So in 2022, rail corridors covered 26% of the state's land area, accounting for 66% of the state's GRP. That's realized per capita growth, right? And and had a jobs per capita ratio of 0.5. You say, really, what does that mean? Basically, 63% of jobs, all jobs in the state of Connecticut, exist along rail transit. Most people may not recognize that. So transit served corridors with negligible job creation, or often because they don't have a multimodal hub. They don't have significant transportation infrastructure investments. So that's why it's so important that we do invest in these. And that's why the BIL-IJA impact and the federal dollars impact from both the previous Biden administration and to a certain extent the new Trump administration are so important. You'll see here, even Governor Lamont back in 2023 addressed this in terms of the release of $2 billion in bill funds for rail and other things. So you see here, the Northeast Corridor is the busiest rail line in the nation, arguably. And improvements here mean more jobs, continue economic growth, and improve quality of life. This highlights various projects that we have ongoing, predominantly managed by the Department of Transportation, well managed by them. But we want to highlight some of these. So, for example, 465 million for replacing the 127-year-old walk bridge in Norwalk, right? That's a pretty big project. You'll see here in New Haven, 123 million for the New Haven Power Improvement Program, another 72 million for the Line Track Improvement Mobility Enhancement Program. So those are pretty impactful. And then some other areas across the state, I'm sure folks here have probably heard of the 116-year-old Connecticut River Bridge between Old Saybrook and Old Lyme. That's also a significant project. You see here the ETAs. Basically, in the next 5, 10, 15 years, a lot of these rehabilitation projects will be forming a completion. We should see and expect to see a pop economically, quality of life wise, as well as other areas, other sectors, other impacts across the state. So we're really excited here at CT BILT to see these incredible programs. So I just want to also quickly make a couple of statements in case folks here aren't aware. On January, I think it was January 27th, the CTDOT put out their Transportation Infrastructure Program, their annual capital plan report. I encourage folks on this call to check that out because your communities, your COGs, your councils of government, your munis, your municipalities, they may be impacted. Your businesses, your nonprofits may all be impacted by this because transportation infrastructure really does affect all sectors of our economy. And a couple things I want to point out about it at a very high level quickly, and we'll continue on, is CTDOT really has four major sources of federal funding, all of which fall under the umbrella of the U.S. Department of Transportation. Those four sources are the Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, Federal Transit Administration, FTA, Federal Railroad Administration, FRA, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, also known as NHTSA. So just a high level set of numbers, then we'll continue. Um, Congress passed IJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, back in 2021. I'm sure folks are probably well aware of that. Through that, five federal fiscal years, FY 2022 to FY 2026, were subject to the annual appropriations from it. The IIJA, provided Connecticut with approximately $5.38 billion in federal transportation formula funding over 5 years, which is an increase of $1.6 billion from previous levels authorized before IJA. Since IJA ends, I just want to make sure folks are aware of this. Since IJA ends in the federal fiscal year of 2026, the CTDOT capital plan assumes funding will continue at the same level from the federal fiscal year of 2026 through FFY 2029. So that is an assumption that the state has made. I'm well aware of folks. Today is a very strange day because at 12:01 this morning, there was a federal shutdown. What I understand, I also encourage anyone who's concerned or wants some more information, please look to the governor's press conference earlier this morning at 11 a.m., where he addressed some of the concerns and considerations, impacts to Connecticut for the federal shutdown. Now, moving on, the other quick things I wanted to highlight is that the Federal Highway Administration funding is the largest funding source for CTDOT's transportation program and the primary funding source for roadways and bridges. The annual formula was about $800 million in FY 2025. And the strategic management utilization of those funds is critical to the capital program, and it's distributed through CTDOT, applied to various criteria. The FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, is the primary federal funding source for CTDOT's public transportation infrastructure program. That program received formula funding that now exceeds $250 million, and again has a 5 annual program apportionments. Moving down the line here, a couple other things. FRA has no formula funds administered. Rather, there's discretionary grant programs that exist to support FRA eligible projects and priorities. And we'll talk about some of those in terms of Amtrak and others as we go along in this presentation. Now, from a federal discretionary funding perspective, in addition to those formula funds I just mentioned, the IJA also made more than $100 billion in competitive federal transportation grants available for Connecticut to pursue. Our team, CT BILT, in partnership and assistance to CTDOT, we've worked closely and we've pursued and we've won. And I think that's really, really important. And at a very high level, I'll just rattle off a couple of these. And then, of course, if anyone wants additional information after this, we'll be glad to share some of these projects with you. But for example, on top of what you see on the screen, I just want to call out the $158 million for the Gold Star Memorial Bridge with the North Round Structure Rehabilitation Project. That's really key. There's been 125 million for I-91, I-691 Route 15 interchange improvements. Then there's also 38.9 million for the conversion of the CT Fast Track to an all-electric bus fleet. So there's a number of things. There's 29.6 million for Ansonia, Beacon Falls, and Seymour train stations. So really, I think the reason you're coming here to this webinar and what we hope to continue to spotlight as we move through this presentation is that these projects will continue to roll out over the next 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years. Over that timeline horizon, the expectation would be all of you on this call that are leaders in your communities and in your organizations can think about, hey, these projects have a pipeline that coming down the pike here. What can we do? How can we augment? How can we take advantage? Is there an advantage that we need to consider in order to get a multiplicative effect from it, a force multiplier effect from those investments? So, for example, transportation resilience, you'll see here the Protect program, over $90 million plus in federal funds for resilient transportation upgrades. And again, we show you what's quote unquote the after, what the after will look like for the Norwalk bridge replacement. So the focus areas here for Protect are really about raising and elevating roadways and bridges, protecting critical freight commuter routes, right? And of course, flood proofing those culverts, drainage, and highways. Those are all key to resilience. And so, as well as other enhancements that we've all seen along I-95 in our rail infrastructure. And for those who don't know what Protect stands for, I know sometimes people are like, well, what does that mean? There's a lot of acronyms, as we know, with governments, federal and state. But Protect stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation. Protect. So I couldn't say it 3 times fast. Forgive me, but it's a really important program, and the 90 million is really being allocated over a 5-year program. So again, thank you for this portion. What I'll do is I'd like to transition over to Ryan to share some more information.
Thank you so much, Rob. And I really love that slide that Rob shows that shows all the investments across the state. Really shows how important it is that resiliency is considered with infrastructure. Because at the end of the day, what the economy and the movement of people and goods relies on is resilient infrastructure. So on the energy grid modernization side, we see that the BIL was funding the utilities and state investment to build a stronger, smarter grid. This chart on the right, you can see the breakdown between IRA and the BIL. And so the IRA, which I won't get a ton into, also had money for resiliency, but for clean, efficient, and renewable energy, whereas the BIL was focused more on broadband, water, clean air, and you'll see there was also money for brownfields and climate resiliency and green infrastructure. A lot of these grants have been, especially on the discretionary side, have been won by CT Deep. Deep's been incredible at pursuing discretionary opportunities and really maximizing how much money we're able to bring to Connecticut. At the beginning, when we took over this role, the governor said, I want to get our unfair share of federal dollars. I want to punch above our weight, and we certainly see that we have. The priorities specifically of the BIL included undergrounding and storm hardening lines, advanced sensors, microgrids, and storage, renewable integration, uh, solar, offshore wind. That was more on the IRIS side, and fewer outages, faster recovery, and lower carbon footprint are all keys to the energy grid modernization. And we know that if we modernize our grid, we'll have a more reliable and resilient grid. And so this is one of my favorite programs that was actually in the bipartisan infrastructure law, or I should say allocations. A lot of people don't even know this, but our delegation Senator Murphy and Senator Blumenthal fought really hard for there to be money specifically set aside for the restoration of the Long Island Sound. There were a few other areas of the country that specifically got money like this. So it was $100 million over 5 years to be administered by the Long Island Sound Futures Funds. This is a fund that's administered by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and they're a foundation that covers the entire country and allows for programs like this. The Long Island Sound's Future Fund specifically covers the Long Island Sound watershed. And so that starts all the way up in Canada, goes through Vermont and New Hampshire through the Connecticut River. And we see it goes through Mass, Connecticut, and New York. And so the program allowed for anyone in these areas in the watershed to apply for their various programs. They are a program that has been around since 2005, but this is the largest amount of money they've ever received. And the goals of their projects are to improve water quality by reducing pollution, stormwater runoff, and nitrogen inputs. One of the issues, byproduct of farming in the Connecticut River Valley is that nitrogen that's used to fertilize crops does tend to end up in the Long Island Sound. And if anyone knows the history of the Long Island Sound, there was a time period where it was not clean, had a reputation of being very dirty. You wouldn't want to swim in it. You still hear people who rip on Connecticut beaches. But I think really over the last 30, 40 years, you've seen incredible conservation, restoration work that is now showing up. And I say that because I'm someone who lives about half a mile from the Long Island Sound. And this summer, we've been having pods of dolphins sightings. And I really can't speak enough good things about the Long Island Sound itself and how beautiful it is and how it really is this gem that Connecticut has. And so, one of the goals of this fund is really to restore, protect coastal habitats, rivers, corridors, increase resiliency of coastal communities. And they want to do that through building living shorelines, such as salt marshes. We know that these are natural barriers that act as natural sponges when there are increased flood events as well as storm surge. One of the other components of this program is the public education, community engagement, and inclusive management of the sound. I just want to do a quick top line note of like kind of the scale of this program. In 2023, they issued 39 grants that totaled $12 million across Connecticut, New York, Mass, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Uh, the total impact of these programs, the metrics measured that these programs, which included projects reducing stormwater runoff, reducing nitrogen pollution, coastal habitat restoration, marine debris removal, watershed improvements, and education. They estimate that from that grant cycle, 2.7 million gallons of stormwater was cured, 1,100 pounds of nitrogen was prevented from entering the sound, 120 tons of marine debris removal, as well as 800 acres of coastal habitat restoration in Connecticut and New York, and restoring another 102 miles of river corridor and reaching another 30,000 people with educations. One of the other big projects that this program was involved with and that Connecticut actually got other money for was removing a dam on the Naugatuck River, the Kinneytown Dam, and they've actually restored and are in the process of restoring that river's migratory access of Atlantic salmon. So it's a lot going on in the LI Sound in terms of improving resiliency and climate climate minded mitigation. And so I think we're to the next slide. Okay, great. And so this touches on a bit about the water and wastewater upgrades, modernizing agent treatment plants and pipes, Connecticut got 28 million for lead service line removal and another 30 million for the Clean Water Fund and General Supplement Fund, and another 2.6 for emerging contaminants. I know that money specifically is being used to deal with PFAS and other emerging contaminants that have entered our waterways, and another 7.6 million for the Drinking Water Emergent Contaminant Fund. These are all formula funds that were sent to the state of Connecticut and are in many cases administered by the Department of Public Health. And resiliency benefits from these upgrades, especially the stormwater upgrades, better storm surge resistance, energy efficiency, and public health protection.
All right. Thank you, Ryan, for that. And also, real time, I think I probably stepped on Ryan's toes a little bit, but apologies to you, Ryan. We'll keep it going. Next, I'm going to talk about urban redevelopment and brownfields. I had the great honor when I was a former deputy commissioner over at DECD, where I oversaw the brownfield program there and worked close conjunction with DEEP. So I know the great work and the impact that brownfields have. In fact, arguably, it has the greatest public to private ratio of almost any program in the state of Connecticut. Most people may not know that. For every $1 of brownfield public dollars, you may get anywhere from 10 up to 16 in private capital. So it's one of the biggest economic drivers and one of the best environmental drivers as well. So really revitalizing contaminated and abandoned properties into affordable housing, economic hubs, and green spaces is key. Again, going back to the resiliency aspects, I never really learned this until the past year. I didn't realize this. My friends at Green Bank, our friends at OPM, specifically Joannia Wozniak-Brown, they've expressed these things to us. And I know we have 5 minutes left, so we're going to wrap it up very quickly. But green spaces, often putting more green space like just lawns, green, large yards, can act as a sponge to a certain extent and reduce flooding. I really didn't realize that myself until really the past 12 months. So I think those are the types of things that open people's minds to this. So last part, funding. One of the biggest funding drivers for BIL to this was the Weatherization Assistance Program. It's not exactly environmental in nature outside of the home, but it is important for energy efficiency because of the cascading effects beyond it. So, and again, these benefit both historically underserved Connecticut communities as well as the wider community. So, let's wrap it up here. Basically, the key goals are protecting communities, ecosystems, building smarter, cleaner, more sustainable transport, multimodal, and environmental conditions, and leveraging those future dollars, those federal dollars for long-term future growth. And we'll see, as you see from here, Connecticut is a leader in resiliency investments. So at this point, we'll stop. We'd love to open it up for any questions. And Ryan and I and the team will be glad to take any over email, follow us up afterwards. We'll be glad to answer your questions. So we'll stop there and open it up to anyone who'd like to have any questions. Okay. Well, if there are no questions, again, and maybe none that come to mind, we'll gladly send out this presentation for your information. We'll also add some links to some other key resources post webinar. I'll look for those in the next 24 hours from the team. And we're really grateful to everyone joining and participating in such an important week in the state of Connecticut. I think it's all of our collaborative efforts and using and keeping as a priority top of mind to help address the resiliency of the state of Connecticut. So we do appreciate you guys. And Ryan, do you have any final thoughts or comments before we end the webinar?
Now, just thank you all for joining.
All right. All right. We'll leave it there. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.